Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Triple N Talk Show. I am Dr. Nik Nikam. We are delighted you could join us. We are coming to you live on YouTube. You can also follow us on Google Plus. And please do download our app for Android or Apple devices so you can follow us around the clock. While you're on YouTube, you can also watch over 600 videos we have covering the days of our lives. And if you would like to be a guest on our program, please do contact us. Our number is 281-745-4161. And our app will also get you a connection to our Facebook page, which is a Nik Nikam Network. And there you can follow all the latest news, views, opinions, and all the video programs that we have produced in the past. Today, we're going to be talking about immigration visa. Yes, indeed. What is an EAD? What is an H4? What is an H1B? And how do we get your spouse to come to this country and work? All these questions will be answered. And my special guest is Sophia Johnykutty, who is an attorney. Hello, Sophia. Welcome
Hey, Nick.
to
How are you?
Triple N Talk Show. And okay, let's start off by giving a little introduction about yourself, before we jump into all these questions. And this topic is particularly important for college graduates who are graduating and looking for a job. So I think this will be of great interest to you. So let's begin.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's delighted. Okay, give a little bit about your background and then what you specialize in. And
Sure. So my name is Sophia Johnykutty. I am an immigration attorney. I have more than 7 years of experience within the immigration field. I reside in Houston, Texas. I have a lovely husband and a child and 2 dogs. I currently work with a law firm called Harone Kirby Law Group. We are a boutique immigration law firm. We provide customized and personalized immigration solutions, which are very cost effective. Previously, I worked at our nation's 2 largest immigration firms, so I have extensive experience with small companies, big companies, individuals, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions you may have.
that's fascinating. Ladies and gentlemen, if you would like to join in the conversation, the number to call here is 281-745-4161. Okay, let's start off with a hypothetical situation.
Okay.
I'm finishing up my master's in software engineering, like the rest of the Indians.
Okay.
And probably I got 6 months to a year. And a couple of companies have shown some interest in hiring me. And where do I go from here?
So you're in the United States.
I'm in the States.
You're
I'm
getting you
attending
got your U.S. master's.
master's
You're
in
about to
software
graduate.
engineering, and I'll be graduating probably in 6 to 8 months.
Okay. So first thing I would do would be to contact your designated school official, which most F1 students are very familiar with. Right?
Yeah.
You know your
Yes.
designated school official, right? So you'd contact her or him, and you would talk about starting the EAD process, which is the Employment Authorization Document process. You want to try and file this at least 90 days before you graduate, so that when you start working with your employer, you'll have this document in hand, along with your I-20, which is this. It's a document that's issued by the school.
I see.
That states that you're going to be working in this area of expertise, which is related to your degree or program. So you can't work for any different company. You have to work in an area that's specific or directly related to your program, right?
Okay, tell me a little bit more about this EAD, employment. What is this?
Employment Authorization Document.
Authorization document.
So it's fairly straightforward.
Who starts this, and what do I need to do to get this document completed?
You talk to your designated school official. They'll annotate or put remarks on your I-20.
I see.
You file an application called an I-765 with U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, along with the applicable fees, and then you'll get an actual card in the mail. This card it's called an Employment Authorization Document, but don't confuse it as a travel document. So it's not actually, it doesn't serve as traveling. So that's the first step of the process. And then in the meantime, you continue to court your different companies. Congratulations on so many different companies.
That's fast. Okay, so how long does it take for me to get this EAD?
It would take approximately 90 days, but keep in mind that government processing times change. So it could go faster or slower, but most likely slower, right?
So is this dependent on where I have job opportunities, or is it just a routine process?
It's a pretty routine process, but I mean, that's a good question. Different service centers process at different processing times. So you could either talk to your designated school official, go onto the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services processing timelines. Unfortunately, those processing guidelines are a little off. So you might want to check some blogs or contact your immigration attorney.
What if I don't have a job offer?
If you don't have a job offer, that's a very sad situation for you. You most likely need to try and get a job offer, or consider going into another master's program if you want to remain in the United States.
I see.
Or go outside the country, work, get some experience, and then try to come back in later on. But it's going to be harder.
You said something about doing another continuing education program. So how long is this student visa or F1 visa valid?
So when you're admitted as an F1 student,
yeah.
Customs and Border Protection will annotate or designate DS, which means duration of status.
I see.
So it's whatever, as long as you maintain a full caseload, which is, again, you're going to have to keep in contact with your designated school official. You should know her name by now. So you keep in touch with her, and then you'll make sure that you don't fall below, unauthorized employment. Because if you work legally in the United States as an F1, you're going to have trouble adjusting later on. Okay.
I see,
So you have to have the proper work authorization, and you have to maintain your caseload. So
as F1, from what I understand, is I can't work.
Correct, unless you have an employment authorization document, or you're part of a curricular practical training program, you cannot work.
So can I be like a professional student and stay here for as
Hey, if
many
you
years?
have the money, go for it. Which will,
my father is going to pay for
if your father has the money, kudos to you.
He won't start our Birla, I don't know. Okay, so now we have applied for this EAD. What happens? I got the EAD, and what else I need to do in order to work in a company, say like a software company or something like, or maybe oil-related company?
Sure. Okay, so you have these job offers, right?
Yeah.
You work with your employer. You'll complete an I-9. You should present your employment authorization document to Human Resources, and that will be good as long as you're working in the field that you studied in. So it has to be related, right? And during that time, make sure you make the best impression possible, because you're going to be later on wanting an H1B sponsorship, and then later on green card. So that's something that you need to consider.
So how long is this EAD valid?
That's a good question. So generally 1 year.
I see.
But if you are in a science, technology, engineering, math degree, right? So, and you work for an employer who participates in E-Verify, so that's two-pronged analysis.
Yeah.
If those two things are true, you may be able to get a STEM extension, so an additional 17 months.
17 months. Where does the immigration attorney come into the picture? Do I, work with an immigration attorney while I'm completing my final year, or after I got the job, or when do I start connecting with a good attorney like you?
Sure. Thank you. I appreciate that. Generally speaking, you don't need an attorney when you get your EAD. The EAD application itself is relatively easy. If you're one of those people who are very anxious and you want somebody to walk you through the process, I can certainly assist, or an immigration attorney can assist. But you won't typically see an immigration attorney until you begin the H1B process.
I see. What if the counselor doesn't like me?
The attorney?
No, the counselor in the school.
Oh, the designated school official. Who couldn't like you?
No, you never know. Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Triple N Talk Show. I am Dr. Nik Nikam, and my special guest is Sophia Johnykutty, and she is an attorney specializing in immigration. And we are talking about immigration for fresh graduates coming out of the university and trying to get into the main labor force in America. So we just covered about EAD, and okay, so now I am working.
Yes.
And what do I need to do to continue to work or to be employed in this country?
I would be a very strong worker, be very nice, make a good impression.
If I want to move further in terms of immigration
process.
Yeah.
So the goal for you would be to get an H1B filed for you.
What is an H1B?
An H1B visa is a specialty occupation visa.
Yeah.
We have to prove to the U.S. government that your position requires a bachelor's degree, or at least, or minimum, or the equivalent. Okay, and that will be fairly easy because you're a software engineer, right?
Yeah.
And you have a master's degree, and typically software engineers require required degrees.
Yeah.
It's a little bit more difficult if you have, let's say, maybe like a marketing or a receptionist. You know, typically those positions don't require a bachelor's degree.
I see,
So they might not qualify for an H1B petition.
I see.
So the next thing also, your employer has to prove up that they have the ability to, their means to sponsor you. So here it kind of gets a little tricky because the H1B system, there's only a limited amount of H1Bs available, right? So there's 65,000 within the general lottery, and then there's an additional 20,000 visas allocated to U.S. master's degrees.
I see.
So if you have a U.S. master's degree, you would be able to be placed into the lottery system twice.
I see.
There's a lot more demand for H1B visas than there are visas available, unfortunately. So what happens is that immigration practitioners and companies file within the first earliest date possible, which is April 1st. And then you have a week long to submit the application, and then unfortunately your case will most likely get placed into lottery. So it's really up to chances. And here, Nick, if you might want to consider looking into trying getting multiple employers to file an H1B for you. It's not good for companies, but it might
maybe
be.
The company where I'm working may not like it if they find out. You know, if
it's risky.
If they tap into my hardware, I mean hard drive.
No, that's true. You probably don't want to do it at
you
home.
You don't want to do it
at work.
On a company computer.
Exactly. 101.
Ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to Triple N Talk Show. I'm Dr. Nik Nikam, and my special guest is Sophia Johnykutty. She's an immigration attorney, and we are talking about getting jobs for graduating students with bachelor's or master's degree and moving on in their lives. Okay, how many people apply for this H1B visa?
Right, there's a huge demand. This past fiscal year was 233,000 applications.
233,000
for 85,000 visas. There was 233. So there's a chance. One of the websites that I looked into mentioned that there was a 1 in 3 chance of being selected for companies to get.
Otherwise, I like to get back to India.
Yeah.
or become a perpetual student.
Right. You're gonna really rely on your dad on that one.
Okay, let's talk a little more about this H1B visa, and when do I need to get this visa, and how long does it take, and how complicated this is? Okay, so
I'll start with that.
Yeah.
First, I would probably start contacting your employer around February of March of the year that your EAD is applying. So let's just say, for instance, you have a STEM extension.
Yeah.
I know that a lot of F1 students don't want to move over to H1B for tax purposes, because tax-wise, it might not be the best. But really, for your chances, you might want to try and get into both lotteries to see whether or not you can, if you get a visa, right? So the odds are, if you get into both lotteries, you have a U.S. master's degree, that's 4 chances of getting an H1B visa. So when would be as the earliest your HR will be willing to sponsor you? Probably February, March, because it takes the employer and the immigration attorney some time to get all the paperwork ready to file on the earliest date possible, which is April 1st.
I see,
And then once the case is approved and selected, right? If the case is approved and selected, the earliest you can start working on an H1B visa is October 1st of that fiscal year.
You mean I can get it from April within October of the same year?
Okay, so so you file April 1st, and then if approved and selected, you can start working on your H1B technically October 1st.
Oh, I see.
So,
and how complicated it is? How many pages of documentation we have to produce?
Okay, so the complication is really going to be a lot of immigration attorney and your employer coordination. Okay,
I see.
There's going to be some basic information we're going to be pulling from you, like passports, information if you're married, etc., your bachelor's degree and master's degree, etc.
Well,
But
you brought
a
up
lot
the
of
question of marriage. We're going to talk about that one too. Shortly. You know, my parents have been ever since I came to this country
pressuring you.
Get me.
Oh, poor thing.
Oh, you know how the Indian parents are. I mean, now they say you got your master's degree and all. So we'll get to that in a minute. But I have a lot more questions.
Okay.
So, what is the difference between working under a EAD versus a H1B?
EAD is temporary. You only get 1 year or 17 months, right? So it's really trying to get that H1B in place, because once you get your H1B, then you can start pushing for sponsorship, which is later on we'll talk about, right? So if we get a company willing to sponsor you a permanent residency, then you're going to be able to stay in the country and live here and work here until you get a green card, which is essential for Indian nationals.
That's fascinating. Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching the Triple N Talk Show. This is coming to you live on YouTube, and you can also download our app, which is NNN Media for your Android or Apple devices, and you can follow us round the clock. While you're watching us on YouTube, you can also browse through more than 600 videos we have on the days of our lives, and you can learn a lot about how we have been able to capture the essence of our experience in Houston. And please also visit our Facebook page, which is the Nik Nikam Network, where we bring you the latest news, views, comments, commentaries, and video clips from our interviews. All our video interviews are cataloged on YouTube, and we have more than 160 interviews on YouTube, so you can browse through whatever topic is of interest to you. Okay, so now we got a H1B visa, and I'm working. It's been a year now. Where do we go from here?
Okay, so you got your H1B visa, you've been working. You have to talk to, at one point, you're going to have a hard conversation with your employer and try to see if you can work into discussion permanent residency. Your employer most likely won't want to see you, right? The HR probably is like, well, I just got your visa, let's wait some time. But it's in your best advantage or in your interest to try and get this green card sponsorship as early as possible. Some employers have policies, and you can really look into that contract when you are deciding employers. So if you have multiple employers courting you, you might want to look into seeing what their policy is.
Well, you know, when you mentioned permanent residence, if my mother finds out, she's going to be screaming. She says, you better come back next flight.
Or you can buy your ticket to
That's right. So, but, you know, that's a very important point. Then once we have a work visa H1B, and then you say we have to work for immigration. But before that, as I said, you know, the parents are already lining up a lady who has a master's degree in health and nutrition, and, you know, she wants to come to States. And what if I get married, you know, how things change?
Okay, so it really depends on if you're getting married after the green card process or before the green card process. So
which
the
is,
H1B,
maybe you can tell me which is better after you.
The H1B visa is limited to a total of 6 years.
I see.
There's a certain exception, right? And the exception is if you get through the permanent residency part, is generally a 3-step process.
I see,
The first is a labor certification application. You file that with the Department of Labor, and you prove that there are no U.S. workers to work in your position, which might not be difficult since you're a software engineer. The second step is proving up your credentials, that you have the necessary education and experience, and that the company can sponsor you or pay your wages, okay? So if you get through the first and the second step of the process, which can be quite lengthy, depending on where it is and what company and how many applicants there were, if we get through the first and second step of the process, I would recommend going ahead and getting married then, because if you have an I-140 on file and you're currently an H1B employee and you have, if you want to bring in your wife and you don't want her to sit at home and shop,
I know.
then you want
Wait
to.
a minute, I'm not even making money when you're talking about shopping.
I'm sure you're an H1B employee. You're going to be making money, right? Anyways, so you don't want her to sit at home and shop. You want to bring her over as the H4. And then you can file, once she comes in as an H4, since you have an I-140 on file and you are H1B employee, then you can file for an employment authorization document based off of her H4.
Would it help if I work for like a huge tech company like Apple or Google or Microsoft, something like that?
I mean, that's always great because there's good benefits. But I mean, a lot of the bigger companies have strict immigration policies. They don't let you sponsor after a certain period of time. Your case might be routed. So I kind of argue that maybe smaller companies might be the way to go because you can talk to your HR a little bit more accessible. You might want to talk to them. But again, it also depends on how well your company is doing. If your company's not doing very well, they might not want to move forward with the green card process. right?
Well,
Because
that
it's
is true. You have
expensive.
to have a company that is moving forward, not
Moving
backwards.
forward, yes, exactly.
If the
For
boat
both
is,
job security and for your
if
immigration.
the boat is sinking,
Yeah, you
I
gotta
think
get
we
out.
will be sinking with it. Ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to Triple N Talk Show. It is coming to you live on YouTube, and my special guest is Johnykutty. I'm sorry, Sophia Johnykutty. Maybe let's give out your contact information, Dollis. If somebody has any questions,
Sure.
maybe they can call you and get some information.
Yes. So my direct line is 713-955-2066.
Where is your office located?
Yeah, it's West Chase District, so Richmond and Gessner. And, generally.
Well, that's close to the university. It's not too far off.
No, yeah, that's true. You should visit me.
Yeah. Okay, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, let's continue with this conversation we were having. So, what can my spouse do once she gets here to work or even go for education?
So if we get her an H4 and we have an I-140 on file and pending, and all you're doing is just waiting for a green card to become available, because as we know, there's a huge demand for Indian nationals who are born in India applying for the green card process. So the likelihood of getting an immigrant visa for an Indian national is relatively quickly it's not going to happen, really.
How many years are we talking about?
Just depending on the immigrant category, EB2, EB3. I think EB2 is like maybe 7 years, 7, 8 years. So it changes every month. So the processing times change and vary, but it's going to be a long wait, generally speaking. So if that's the case, your wife comes into the country.
Yeah.
She's an H4. She has an H4 visa in hand. We file for an I-761.
Explain to me what is an H4 visa?
The H4 visa is a visa that's dependent on the H1B. So all she has to prove up is that you are an H1B holder, that you have an H1B,
married to him,
and that she's married to you. So a marriage certificate. So you really have to buckle down and get married.
So there's no fake.
No, none of that. No girlfriend visa.
Oh, I see.
Or
where do you apply for this H4 visa?
You apply at the nearest consulate. So
in India.
In India.
Oh, okay. So once she gets this, what does this visa entail her to?
Just basically live in the country along with her husband. So as long as her husband's able to stay in the country and work on the H1B, she is able to stay here and work she's able to stay here and live in the United States until her husband has to leave, if that's the case. If not, then like I said, if we got through the first and second step of the permanent residency process, then she's able to apply for work authorization, which is a huge benefit and didn't happen until recently.
So do I need to get the immigration visa before she can get a work visa?
Yes.
Or is there any other way for her to?
She can apply for her own H1B, but you know that process very well, right?
Yeah.
You just went through it.
Yeah.
And so it's a quite difficult one to find employers willing to sponsor you.
Yeah.
Because she won't have the advantage of being studying here unless you want to go through the F1 process for her.
I see, yeah.
But she won't have that EAD initially to try and get an employer willing to sponsor her for an H1B. So it's a little bit more difficult. But if her job is in huge demand, she might be able to swing it.
I see. Oh okay. So I'm a little bit confused here. Okay. You said I apply for the immigration visa, and
the permanent residency.
The permanent residency visa. And do I have to wait till it is approved before my spouse can get a work permit?
You have to wait until the I-140 is filed and approved. Yes. So
what is the difference? When you say it's approved, that means I am officially approved for an immigration visa, or
no.
Just an application?
Right. So the permanent residency process is a 3-step process, right? First, it is Department of Labor.
Yeah.
And that perm labor certification has to get approved.
Yeah.
Second, we have to file an I-140 petition with the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. Yeah. And that has to get approved. Once we get to the second step, then your wife can come in and apply for an employment authorization document. Then the third step is a adjustment of status application, where you actually apply to become a green card holder.
Green card holder.
And then once your priority date is current and it's approved, then you become a green card holder and you don't have to worry about H4 EADs.
Okay. From step 1, step 2, step 3. So after step 2, she will be able to work, right?
Correct.
So how long does it take from the time you apply to get to step 2?
2. So that's where, at least I would recommend at least 2 years. It just really depends on your employment-based category.
Yeah.
But I'm saying, generally speaking, if you're EB2 and EB3,
Yeah.
And your employer moves relatively quickly,
Yeah.
I would allot at least 6 months to prepare the Department of Labor filing, the perm labor certification, and then 8 months right now for processing. And that's assuming your case doesn't get selected for a random audit. If that's the case, then we're looking at over a year right now, right? Yeah. And then the second step is the I-140 petition, and you can premium process it, but generally employers aren't willing to pay the additional $1,225. Yeah. So if you want to,
I don't mind spending.
Yeah, well, you can get your father to pay for that, right?
I forgot. No, I'm making my money, so I'm off their payroll.
Oh, okay.
But I don't think Indian kids are off their parents' payroll. They're
permanently
on their parents' payroll.
That's true.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, you are watching the Triple N Talk Show. It's coming to you live on YouTube, and you can also watch us on Google Plus. And while you're doing that, please do download our app for Android or Apple devices, anywhere in the world for that matter. And you can watch these interviews live, streamed to YouTube and also Google Plus. While you're on YouTube, please do subscribe to our YouTube so we can keep you informed of all our future talk shows. And while talking about talk shows, we have over 600 videos on our YouTube channel, which is Nik Nikam channel, accenting our experience in Houston. If you want to get a glimpse of how life is in Houston, you can look at all the things that are on our YouTube. And also, please visit our Facebook page also, which is Nik Nikam Network, and we will keep you updated on news, views, opinions, commentaries, music, and all the interviews that are coming up here. All our interviews are cataloged on our YouTube. Okay, Sophia, let's give out your contact information and the location of your office before we go further with this visa questions.
Okay, thank you. So our office is currently located at 9700 Richmond, Suite 105 in Houston, Texas. My number is 713-955-2066, and my email address is Sophia, SOPHIA, at Hiron, GIRON, Kirby, KIRBY, law, LAW.com.
Oh, okay, so I'm still a little bit worried about my spouse being not able to be work or do something, because especially if you have a master's degree, you're not going to be sitting in the house 24 hours, and plus a cultural shock on top of that. Maybe they'll have so many Indian friends.
Right.
It may not be.
Why do you have to make your wife work all of a sudden?
No, I mean, eventually everybody, would
wants
like to
work. That's true. I would go crazy.
Especially if they have, a career.
Sure.
So is there any other way they can work? Or is it illegal to work in this country if they don't have a...
As an H4, no. I mean, if your spouse, let's say, worked for a company, I mean, a master's in nutrition, I don't see this happening, but it could be. Worked in a company, let's just say she had a different degree. Let's say she worked for Tata in India. Her employer would be maybe willing to transfer her as an L1 if she worked in a specialized knowledge capacity or as a manager. So she'd be able to transfer her under the L1 visa, and she can continue working in the United States as an L1. And in that situation, you might want to consider moving to an L2, because L2s have the employment authorization document, are allowed to apply for it just based off of being a spouse of L1.
I see.
And that gives you a lot of flexibility in the job market, right? Because your employer does not have to sponsor you or change for H1B, change of employer, every time that you change jobs. So employment authorization document is very handy.
So I had to tell my mom to make sure that she has a girl who is
works for a major
has got a
company.
pretty good opportunity to work in this country.
Exactly. So that's
what kind of fields there are demand, just off the top of your head?
Right. I have a lot of computer engineering, software engineering positions. So you're in the right field. As well as, I mean, now the oil and gas market's kind of down, but there's still geophysicists being sponsored because there's just not a huge U.S. job force in that field. In
the healthcare industry, which employs more than 20% of the U.S. workforce, I don't know many people are willing to sponsor spouses for work.
Right.
Yeah. So tell me a little more about this L1.
The L1 is a intra-company transfer visa, work visa. And so basically you have to work at least for a company abroad for at least 1 year. And then that company abroad has to have a related entity in the United States. So it could either be subsidiary,
or like a franchise or something.
Subsidiary, affiliate, branch office, some sort of relationship. And both companies have to be fully operating, have to have like business. So you can't just kind of create a company. You can create a company and file a new office petition, but that's a little bit harder. But we won't go there. Let's just stick with Tata.
Yeah.
So Tata Consulting sends someone over from India into the United States to work.
Yeah.
And that's called an intra-company transfer. And there's only 2 ways that you can do this. 1, if you work in a position requiring specialized knowledge, or 2, if you work in a managerial or executive position.
What about if my spouse were to look for employment with some of the American companies like Apple or Microsoft or Intel, who have offices in India?
In India.
Would that help?
Yeah, no. So she would have to at least work abroad for at least 1 year before she can come here.
Yeah.
So, and that's
we can arrange for that.
Yeah. In our makeup situation, yes. Yeah. So that works as well.
But they have to be willing to
transfer her
and find a job here.
Yeah.
So maybe that may be a very good way to actually, find an employment if they work for an American company.
And that's really good too.
It could be even bank. I mean, there are so many American companies, not just necessarily software or hardware.
Right. If you marry a manager, though, a manager executive, let's just say of a big company, and they move forward with an EB1 case, which there's no backlog of cases, you can get your green card a lot faster.
Oh,
the process is cut it by lots of time, like at least maybe a year.
So you're saying an MBA is probably better than a
maybe. Huh? It really depends on her role abroad and if her company is willing to transfer her and sponsor her.
I see.
For the EB13 category, it's the multinational executive category.
How often does this happen?
I mean, it's pretty difficult, but a lot of companies, I mean, if the market is right and the role is needed in the United States, then companies are willing to move forward with it. So when I was working at the 2 large immigration firms, I would regularly file EB13 petitions.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching a Triple N talk show. We're talking about immigration visa for freshly graduating students. Something is coming up here. Let's see. Okay, I pressed the wrong button. And my special guest has been Sophia Johnykutty. Let's give out your contact information, and so that if anybody has any questions, they can get in touch with you.
Yes, feel free to contact me. I don't charge for phone calls. 713-955-2066. 713-955-2066.
And where is your office located?
Richmond and Gessner, so West Chase District, 9700 Richmond Avenue, Suite 105, Houston, Texas.
Ladies and gentlemen, you have been watching Triple N Talk Show. I am Dr. Nik Nikam, and my special guest has been Sophia Johnykutty. We were talking about immigration visa, especially for graduating students who want to work here and bring their spouses and find meaningful employment in this country and live happily ever.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's been a pleasure having you, Sophia, and we'll see you next week. Thank you for your attention.